Monty, you have been so instrumental in kind of pointing me in the right direction. And
it was about looking at your character defects in spirituality.
It's the integration of clinical practices with the 12 steps.
It's an absolute pleasure. He certainly knows a lot of people. He's got a lot of energy, and sometimes when you don't have so much energy, he picks you up and carries you.
Having the Monty Man there certainly helps.
This is one of the places that is about the business of the solution.
The views expressed on this special broadcast of the Take 12 radio show do not necessarily reflect those of KHLT Recovery Broadcasting or its affiliates. KHLT is not affiliated with any particular 12-step fellowship.
Now here's that guy who's getting less popular minute by minute, your host, the Multi-Man.
Well, greetings, friends and recovery family, those of you who are advocates of, those of you in recovery, and perhaps some of you who should be. Welcome to another fine episode here at Take12Radio.com on your internet dial, broadcasting to you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, now on YouTube as well. So you can watch our shows, you can listen to our shows, you can download our shows, you can listen to them or watch them on your smartphone or tablet. Visit our Facebook, our Twitter, our LinkedIn, our Google+, all that social networking stuff just for you. Hey, listen, our email address here is take12radio@comcast.net. And if you're listening on another device and you're not in front of your computer or your tablet, our website address is take12radio.com. Type that in just like it sounds. And you will find there the world's only faith-based, solution-focused 12-stepology taught and trained recovery radio station, broadcasting to you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. All right, today on the show, my guest is Mike Rinkin. We're going to be talking about an organization called Compassion Ministries. And more specifically, we're going to be talking about mental illness, what it is, what it isn't, how does it relate to the faith community, what are some of the thoughts, misconceptions, and all that kind of thing. And this is an area of real interest for me because I live with a mental illness. And I've thought for years, and I was diagnosed at one point as having bipolar disorder, and Mike doesn't even know this yet, but we think it was a misdiagnosis. It very well could be post-traumatic stress. They look a lot alike. Here's a very interesting thing for you, Mike, to know, is I don't have any medication anymore.
Praise the Lord.
But that has been by the power and hand of God.
That's good.
I am going to tell you right now, right off the bat, listeners, Mike and I both believe where needed that medication is very, very helpful. And we're not here advocating that anybody goes off their medication. We don't ever tell you that. That's not our business. We're not into that. There are times when people need medication. I did for years, and it saved my bacon. It really, really did. And some of you in the recovery community, you've got some weird feelings about that stuff because you feel like you're cheating or something because you're taking a pill. Let me tell you that drugs are supposed to be there for us to use properly. Some of them aren't so good. Some of them are pretty dirty, like opiate-based pain medications. Others are very helpful. So we're not going to be talking about or suggesting that anybody out there go off their medication. That's not something we're going to be talking about. If anything, we're going to be pro-medication in many, many areas, probably more than not. But Mike Rinkin is here. He is really the CEO of Compassion Ministries. Mike, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
You and I have been friends for how long?
A lot of years.
A lot of years. I would probably say at least 10.
Well, more than that.
If not more than that. I've been on your board of directors.
Yes, you have.
And that was an honor. And this interview is way late in coming. We should have been talking about this issue way before this. So I'm just so glad you're here with us. Mike is from Albany, Oregon here. And he has his own personal experience with mental illness. What's your history, Mike?
Well, it's basic personal with my son, who at the time he was 10 years old, got himself into trouble. He ended up in the hospital. They gave him a diagnosis of adolescent schizophrenia, which is a mental illness. But as my wife and I, and her name is Judy, began to read about it, we just kind of disagreed with the psychiatrist. But they're gods, and so you can't disagree with them too much. But anyway, so as we read and so on, 3 years passed, and then Eric had another episode where he ended up in the hospital, and this time he was given the proper diagnosis, which was bipolar or manic depression, which is what Monty dealt with or was diagnosed. So psychiatrists can make mistakes. It's not something that's you go from A to B to C. It doesn't always work that way.
Right.
And so our son became ill those two times, and then he was hospitalized some more. And then came along a group called NAMI, National Alliance for the Mentally Ill, which helped us to begin to wrestle with this illness. I've been a pastor, and being a pastor, our kids are supposed to be perfect, and I wrestled with that for a long time. And then through NAMI, National Alliance for the Mentally Ill, began to realize that it wasn't my fault. He has an illness that is not a spiritual illness. It's an illness that he's got a broken brain. The brain's not working.
Right.
And so through that process and through God's call, and we can talk about that too if Monty wants to.
You bet.
The call was to leave the pastorate and to go into this ministry. I've been doing it for 20 years.
20 years as a father and mentor to many in this organization, Compassion Ministries, which is based out of Albany, Oregon.
Correct.
Here. Before we talk about it specifically, let's talk a little bit more about you and your son. There's a school of thought within many faith organizations, Christian, Jewish, otherwise, that mental illness is demon possession. Okay. What's going on with that, man?
Well, I'm not an expert in the area of when you talk about demon possession, but I do know a little bit about it. And I think a lot of it comes from the churches because of schizophrenia. Schizophrenia is a mental illness. It's probably the most bizarre and probably one of the scariest of all the mental illnesses.
Misunderstood.
And misunderstood. Yeah. Because many times, as you remember when Reagan was shot, there was a fellow that shot him who was dealing with schizophrenia. But his schizophrenia was the result of him, he stopped using his medication. And when he stopped using his medication, all kinds of things can happen. Well, he almost took his life, the president's life. But there are statistics out, and they've been out for many, many years, the National Institute of Mental Health, that says that mental illness is no more dangerous, a person who has a mental illness is no more dangerous than the average person on the street. If, and underline the if they're taking their medication. If they're not, all kinds of things can take place. Not necessarily where they get violent. But this is, I think, a lot of where the churches get scared because, and most people would, is they see some of them acting out and doing some very bizarre things, not just violence, but just some strange things because it's an illness, it's a thinking disorder. They're in a delusional state when they're basically off their meds, and when they're delusional, they start talking to themselves. They do some very strange things, more so than any other mental illnesses. In fact, if you're talking about schizophrenia, there is some help for them, but it's probably the most difficult one to treat as far as helping people.
Right. And so what I've noticed, and we've talked about this before, is that a person will come into a church, a synagogue, even maybe a counseling room, and the person facilitating the conversation will say, "Come on in, sit down, shut the door." And as soon as they mention mental illness, it's like, let's open the door. Right?
Yeah.
We can talk about drug addiction. We can talk. We can even talk about sexual abuse. We can talk about eating disorders. We can talk about all sorts of things that we deal with as human beings.
Right.
But when the mental issue comes up, it really complicates things.
Right.
I think that faith organizations are getting better with this, but I think we have a long way to go.
Right.
And education helps.
Right.
But doggone it, trying to get into the doors of faith organizations sometimes is real difficult.
Yes, it is.
Because they want to spiritualize everything.
Right.
Alcoholism is demon possession. Mental illness is demon possession. If you're gossiping, you might have a demon. If you can't seem to get healed from your malady, whether it's a broken leg or diabetes or back issues, it's because you don't love God enough and you don't have enough faith. And nothing could be further from the truth.
That's true.
And I just want to encourage folks that are listening that have been told by your spiritual leaders and mentors and so forth that you are dealing with your issues because you don't have enough faith or you don't love God enough or you're not doing this right and that right.
Could I interrupt you for a minute here? Because you're on a good subject. If you ever talk really honestly with a clergy who's even gone to seminary or Bible college, there is very few seminaries. Now, Bible college I can't speak that much about, but for seminaries, they're very well-educated folks when they come out of that. But they're lucky if they have one counseling class. And so they know very little about it. So they're in the dark just as much as everybody else. Yeah. And so the obvious thing is to go to demon possession. It's the easiest thing to go to. It's one of the hardest too. but so clergy doesn't have all unless they've taken some classes. I always encourage the pastors when we do a seminar at their church for them to come and for them to bring their leadership, because when they bring them, they can do a better job in that counseling room or meeting with that person or persons.
Right. And here we go again with you don't go to your surgeon for your spiritual, advice.
Right.
Any more than you go to your pastor, to replace your hip.
Now, a pastor can be of help if they've been through some training where they can refer to a psychiatrist or a psychologist or someone in the counseling profession or even the medical profession. Mm-hmm. And they can be great help. But a pastor's got to be willing to say, gee, I can't handle this. I've got to get somebody else to help me.
You bet. Have you ever experienced or do you know of cases where it wasn't mental illness and it was demonic?
Oh, yeah.
So that does happen.
Not that many. I mean, I've not been involved in that many, but I've had a couple.
Yeah, you bet. So it's important to know.
Right.
It's important to qualify the individual and find out what's really going on.
Right.
And there's people that can do that. There are people that are very, very good at doing that.
Right.
Okay, so is this what inspired you to start Compassion Ministries?
Well, it was my son and NAMI, National Alliance for Mentally Ill. And as I got into this and I became the president of NAMI locally here, it just became more apparent that that's what I should do. And it was a call. I mean, it was a call like I went into the pastorate. It was a call from God to go into this ministry. And I really wrestled with God about doing this because I thought, well, I was a pastor for life. Well, I am a pastor for life. But,
sure.
But
you had your church. You were comfortable.
Right. So it was difficult. But I've been in this for 20 years, and we've been in a lot of different organizations, churches, people who mental health organizations and so on and so on. Yeah.
Okay, so what is Compassion Ministries? Tell us about it.
Well, in a nutshell, and basically a big long sentence, it's where I go in and I educate and I train the faith communities on mental illness to reach out to that population and their families. It's not just a matter of those that are ill, but their families are sometimes as ill. They don't have the disease, but they have some of the symptoms. And I know because I was one of them and still am, because I still wrestle with that. Mm-hmm. And so we try to help the whole family on this. It isn't just the one that's ill, but the whole family, and try to get them to work through this too and to make those decisions they need to make, because many times they don't take care of themselves. The family member doesn't, or members, and so consequently they're just as sick as this young man or young boy or whoever we're talking about here. So it's the whole family that we work with.
You bet. All right. When we first met, there was very little in the way of support group meetings.
Right.
I think you had one going on.
Right.
What's happened since then?
Well, we still have support groups. Right now we just have one, but they go and come. They'll last a year to a year and a half, and it runs its cycle, and we move on. And usually we establish these through seminars that we do, educational seminars. We'll set one up, and I usually train people who have been through mental illness themselves or a family member to handle these and take care of them. Because, well, I'll just leave it like that.
Yeah. I know there's an organization called Bipolar Rollers. That's
right.
That's one.
Right.
I don't know if there's one here. But
and then NAMI does those, but they're basically for families, not for the person who's
not for the
ill.
person himself.
They very seldom ever have those.
One of the things that I was impressed with one of your support groups was there was the person dealing with the mental illness, and then there was the family in the same meeting.
Now, many times people will say, don't do that. The clinician will tell you, don't do that because you're going to have a fight going on. But I've found very few times that ever happened. What happened was many times is when a person has an illness, they don't want to talk to their family member about it because they don't want to get in a big row. And so they don't talk about it. No matter how the family member tries, and I was one of them with my son, they're not going to open up. But you establish a support group where you have family members and those that are ill in the same group, they'll begin to listen to others, family members or those that are ill, and they'll begin to hear some things. And what it does, it begins to bring the family together because they're hearing it from somebody else. And it's safe to hear it from somebody else. And then you begin to see some tremendous healing and wholeness take place in so many ways. It's unbelievable.
You know, it's really interesting you say this because unbeknownst to a lot of people in today's 12-step fellowships, if you, as far as open meetings go, not closed meetings that are for just the alcoholic or the addict when it comes to alcohol and drug addiction, but open meetings, if you were the alcoholic or addict and you came to the meeting and you didn't bring your significant other, your wife or your family, they made you go home and get them.
Really?
You bet. Because it's a family
yes, it is.
Deal. You know, and of course that's why one of the reasons they have closed meetings is so you can go personally and without that influence around you. But it's important that the family gets involved.
Right.
So when a person says, well, you know, my family members dealing with this mental illness and they're drug and alcohol abuse, and that just complicates everything.
Yes, it does.
And all that stuff. Why should I have to go to meetings or go learn about this? They're the horse's patoot, right? Why should I miss, my television show and go support them? The deal is because, sorry, but you're sick too.
Yeah, and if you want to get rid of the insanity that's going on, and I use the word insanity, in your household, you better go, or you're not going to be watching much TV or whatever else you're doing.
Yeah.
So you better take care of that first.
Yeah. Okay, we're going to take a short break, and when we come back, let's talk about some of the telltale signs, maybe some of the red flags, some of the things people can watch for.
Okay.
If they suspect something's going on that has to do with mental illness, with either themselves or their families. More with Mike Rinkin when we return.
Good.
I didn't think it was possible for me to be an alcoholic. I was 24 with a good career. I thought I was too smart and that alcoholism only happened to middle-aged men and celebrities. I thought something else was making me sick, shaky, and afraid to face people. Then I found AA and discovered it wasn't something else, it was alcohol. AA helped me find a new life. Alcoholics Anonymous. It works. Look us up. Check your phone book, newspaper, or AA.org.
Hey there, this is the Monty Man from Take 12 Recovery Radio, and I am proud to introduce to you a new, fully licensed, all-male residential treatment facility located on the beautiful east coast of Florida. Serenity Springs Recovery Center is a 10-acre spiritual sanctuary fostered through an intensive 12-step foundation of recovery. Addiction is a disease that deteriorates the body, punishes the mind, and destroys the spirit. It needs to be attacked on all three of these fronts, and Serenity Springs does just that. A unique facility that is committed to providing exceptional individual care in small group settings while utilizing their experienced and dedicated clinical and support staff of licensed therapists and doctors. 30, 60, and 90-day individualized treatment programs are available. Call 386-423-4540 or visit their website at serenityspringsrecovery.com. That's 386-423-4540. Serenity Springs, making a life-changing investment into your recovery.
This is Chris Schroeder. You are listening to Take12Radio.com, recovery talk and positive music.
All right, and we have returned, and my guest this week is Mike Rinkin. He is the CEO of Compassion Ministries, and we're talking about mental illness. This can be something that can be misdiagnosed real easily because a person just may be an unreasonable person, and they just need to get their act together. Maybe grow up, learn some basic life skills, things like that. But so many times it's not that. Mm-hmm. And so I'm going to give the listeners a prime example, and my son doesn't mind if I share this. He's an open book. Cameron, who is now 20 years of age and married, lives in McMinnville. We were, when he was in high school, we were driving him to see, I think it was his second or third year. We were driving him to school one day, and he was shaking. And so when Cameron was going to go, Dad, I can't go. Come on, son. And so you're thinking, this is the basic teenager trying to get out of school. And Colin is our youngest son, who's 15. He's a real self-motivator. He's a mountain mover. He's the leader of all his friends. I mean, he gets straight A's in German. I mean, you know what I'm saying? He's amazing. He can play every musical instrument in the book. He's self-motivated. Cameron's kind of a Larry the Cable Guy, kind of couch potato kid. So when he did this, we just chalked it up as being the couch potato kid, and he's a lovable, lovey-dovey teddy bear. Colin, on the other hand, is a little more, yeah, Dad, if I have to give you a hug, I guess I will, kind of thing. So we didn't think much of it, except for maybe he's just being lazy. And that's one of the first misdiagnoses a lot of people do, right? Oh, my kid's just lazy. So he went to school, and we noticed that he was starting to withdraw. And this is this lovable, very friendly kid. And as the weeks went by, he was starting to panic. And finally, he got so bad on the way to school one day, he totally broke down. He was almost in convulsions. He was crying so hard. He was absolutely petrified. I said, something else is going on. So through a process of investigation, medically, emotionally, spiritually, and mentally, we discovered that Cameron lives with anxiety disorder. And it was paralyzing. And when he wouldn't even go to the movies with his friends, and to the point where he wouldn't even leave the house. He was able to graduate high school by doing high school online with a great organization and called Connections Academy. And he did great. He flourished with it. But it was he couldn't go to church anymore. He couldn't go out with his friends anymore, any of that stuff. Through some very low doses of medication, it was corrected. And Cameron today is fine. He functions fine. He's still on a very low dose. And maybe someday God will do something and he won't have to take it anymore. But, he's not... I kind of stopped taking my medication because out of affordability. We couldn't afford it. And I was scared to death. And God intervened. But I'm not recommending that to people. And I don't recommend it to my son. It's working. He he's a social butterfly now. No problem whatsoever. So we were really fortunate. But what I tell you all this, listeners, because our first thought was he's just being lazy. That's anxiety disorder. That's a mental illness. Something's going on with the neurotransmitters, the way the brain is operating, that isn't clicking on all cylinders. And it's not his fault. Colin came out of the same womb, everything, totally different kid. What are some of the signs that somebody, Mike, may be dealing with a mental illness? I know there's different kinds of mental illness, but what do you think some of the things family members can watch for?
Well, Monty, you said that we'd probably talk about this, and so I brought a sheet along so I could go over some of these things with you. And if your listeners would like a copy of this, if they'll send that they would like that to my email address, that'd be fine. My email address is mt2540@comcast.net. Let me repeat that. mt2540@comcast.net, and I'll be glad to send it to you. This information that I'm going to share with you is for people who possibly deal with major or clinical depression, same diagnosis. In the sheet I have here, and this is still very accurate, 19 million Americans deal with this sort of an illness. And I'm going to share with you the symptoms. If 5 of these fit, I'm not saying that you are dealing with a mental illness or with clinical depression. I'm saying that's a good possibility. You need to check in with the medical doctor. Start there first. And he may refer you or she may refer you. But that's what I would do. Now, let me share with you some of the symptoms. First one is this: persistent depressed mood, including feelings of sadness or emptiness. Another one, loss of interest or pleasure in activities or hobbies that were once you enjoyed, including sex. Feelings of hopelessness and pessimism. Another one, feelings of guilt, worthlessness, and helplessness. Another, insomnia, early morning awakening or oversleeping. Another, loss of appetite accompanied by weight loss or overeating accompanied by weight gain. Another one, decreased energy, fatigue, and feeling slowed down. Another, restlessness and irritability. Another, difficulty concentrating, remembering, and making decisions. Another is thoughts of suicide or death, not just fear of dying or suicide attempts. Persistent physical symptoms such as headaches, digestive disorders, or chronic pain that do not respond to medical treatment and for which no physical cause can be found. Now, I brought this one along because of all the major mental illnesses. Major depression or clinical depression is the one that can be helped so easily through medication. Wow. So easily through medication,
and yet people go without.
And people go without, and they're labeled and so on and so on. They don't want to be labeled, and so they stay away from this. But let me tell you something: the success rate with medication for clinical depression or major depression is unbelievable, folks. So you don't need to walk around with these, and it's not to say necessarily that these symptoms are mental illness. It's just they're there. Mm-hmm. And for a doctor to check this out for you, a medical doctor, the one that you go to, a GP, they could do that and take care of some of your anxieties that you're having about this right now.
Let me play devil's advocate for a second.
Sure.
Haven't we found that your average general practitioner has had very little education in the area of mental illness?
Right. But if they're worth their salt, if they're not able to diagnose, they should send you to a therapist that can diagnose, and that could be that could be a psychiatrist, it could be a psychologist, it could be a clinical counselor of some kind that can do that kind of work.
Right. So I know there's people listening right now that are saying, "Aren't you just saying, let's put them on a pill?" And a part of me says, yeah, that's right. That's what it's for. Who cares? Let's put them on a pill. part of me says that. There's another part of me that says, once again, going back to what we were talking about before, we need to find out what's really going on. But I had a person ask me one time, they said, Monty, don't you think that Jesus is a crutch and, your religion's a crutch and going to your 12-step meetings is a crutch? And my answer to that was, what makes you think I'm not crippled? So what? If this is what's helping, if this works, why not? Right?
And the whole thing is, if you have a broken leg, what do? Do you stay home and mends on its own? You go and get help.
You go get help.
Or you think you have diabetes, you go get help.
Right.
They put you on a pill. They don't put you on a pill. You take insulin or whatever,
or
whatever.
Yeah.
And it's not saying you're a bad person. It's not saying you're a weak person. It's saying that one part of the organ of your body is not working and functioning properly. It has nothing to do with how strong you are or how smart you are. It has nothing to do with that.
Right.
It has to do with an organ not working, just like you break a hand or whatever.
And so if you have heart disease,
right,
and you take heart medication,
right,
we have no problem with that.
Right.
But we have this problem with thinking of the brain as something other than an organ. It's an organ.
Right.
Probably the only one we have not been able to transplant. but it's an organ. Now, Big Pharma, and I've got my issues with Big Pharma, I think sometimes wants to keep us sick. It keeps their job security.
Right.
So you have to be careful. You really do. You need to do the investigation.
Right.
You need to do the footwork. You need to get other people's opinions and sit down with people.
Right.
And one of the things you can do is you can seek out, many insurance companies, if you're insured, will have referrals, and they'll give you a list of people. That's how I found Diane, my counselor.
Right.
They said, here's like 5 people. And so I started calling. And she was, at the time, a nurse practitioner.
Right.
And she knew her stuff.
Yeah, she did.
I was very fortunate. The medication I was on worked immediately. And not immediately. It took like 3 weeks to get it in your... And some people have to, pick different kinds and try different kinds before they work. Let me encourage you, listeners, if you start a medication and there's no change in a week, don't go off the medication.
Right.
There is a process. It has to get into your metabolism. Right. So, because what we have is we got people after a week or 2 weeks saying it's not working. They stop taking it abruptly. Then they start taking another kind of medication. And there's chaos.
Keep in mind, you are not a medical doctor.
Right.
That's what we pay these guys to do, to be the medical doctor, and to be the pill man, if you want to call it that. Whatever you want to call it, they're there to help you. Now, not because you take that med and you take it for 6 weeks or whatever and it doesn't work. Call the doctor up. They don't always get the right medication. It might need another medication or less dosage or more dosage, because it takes time to figure out what's going on. Your metabolism changes. There's just a whole bunch of things going on.
So as you age you might have to change your dosage.
Because our son has had to change medication over the years. He's 42 years old now, and he's had to change several meds over the years. But I'll tell you, if he wasn't on the meds, oh man, we'd be nutted in a fruit
deep
cake.
weeds.
That's right.
You'd all be on medication, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Oh my goodness. Okay, we're gonna take our last break here and get this out of the way. So I want to talk about drug and alcohol dependence and mental illness, because there's a lot going on with that with many people. We'll be right back, folks.
Treatment does not have to be voluntary to be effective. Sanctions and enticements from family, employment settings, and or the criminal justice system can significantly increase treatment entry, retention rates, and the ultimate success of drug treatment interventions. Freedom Interventions provides the direction necessary to get the help of an addiction intervention. We assist with selecting a treatment experience appropriate for the unique needs of your addicted loved one, and provide 6 months of ongoing support to ensure success for everyone involved in the transition into real life. If you know someone who needs a life-saving intervention, visit freedominterventions.com or call 888-762-7557. That's 888-762-7557. Freedom Interventions, providing drug and alcohol interventions and a continuum of care services to clients and their families.
Let's walk through the big book. Join Chris Schroeder and the Monty Man for this in-depth journey through the basic text of Alcoholics Anonymous. As one of the most sought-after circuit speakers in the world of the 12 steps, Chris will be walking us through line by line, page by page, of this wonderful book that has meant so much to so many people who have recovered from the disease of alcoholism. If you've never studied the big book, or even if you have but would like a new, refreshing approach, join us here at Take12Radio.com for an exciting, educational, and spiritual look into a plan for living that can be applied and implemented into the lives of anyone who is willing to recover from alcoholism.
And you can get your copy of Walking Through the Big Book with Chris Schroeder, as well as Walking Through the 12 Steps and 12 Traditions, now available on audio DVD at our Recovery Store. Just go to Take12Radio.com, click on the Recovery Store link, and there you go. Now listen, I want to give you the opportunity, and I'm not sure how long we can do this, but all of our Recovery Store products are by donation, and we have a suggested donated price there. If you are not able to afford it, we have a way to get you to where you can download all of those 34 one-hour workshops at no charge. You're on your honor here. Okay, remember, we're listener supported. In other words, the people that advertise with us, the people that sponsor us are listeners, and their businesses are listeners. And so we depend on that to be able to stay on the air. It's a pricey venture. But more importantly, we want to make sure that you get a clear, concise direction on how to apply and implement these steps into your life if you're living with drug and alcohol addiction. The way the founders of Alcoholics Anonymous meant it to be, not the way it is necessarily today in your 12-step support meeting, but the way it was meant to be, and we want to get that to you. If you are not able to afford it, please do not be shy. Let me know. You can email us. Just go to our contacts link. Let me know what your email address is. We will make it work for you. All right. Mike Rinkin is my guest. CEO of Compassion Ministries in Albany, Oregon, reaching out to people who are hurting with mental illness, reaching out to their families, the faith community, and others, educating and informing people about this issue that is absolutely huge, not just in our country, but around the world. Before we touch on the drug and alcohol thing, tell the story that you tell so well about you and your pastor friend walking down the street one day.
Oh, you remember that
one? Oh,
huh?
yeah, I do.
Yeah. Well, this happened many years ago. I was at a conference. It was a mental illness conference, and it was in San Francisco, in fact. And for whatever reason, I decided to stay off site as far as my sleeping arrangements. And so this other fellow and I were walking along, heading toward the hotel, which is where the seminar was. And as we were walking, I noticed a fellow, it was a ways away from us, under the bridge, and he was having a conversation. And as I looked around, there was nobody around, nobody. And he was talking to himself. And as we got closer, we just passed him up, and we got within 2 blocks of the hotel and where the seminar was. And I said to him, to the man I was walking with, I said, "Did you see that fella?" And he said, "What fella?" He, when we don't want to acknowledge something that's painful or that's scary, we ignore it. And that's what this gentleman did that was beside me. He just ignored it.
Yeah.
And that's so easy to do when you don't want to deal with pain. You don't want to deal with the bizarre, the unusual. And there that man, and I've also often thought of that man, and that he had a family, or did have a family. He was born into this world. He's a human being just like you and I are.
Yeah.
He just happened to have a broken brain that wasn't working functionally, and he probably was on the streets.
And what a lot of people assume when they see somebody who's homeless,
right?
Particularly if they come with all the garb,
right.
The heavy long coat and the dog and the sign, we'll work for food. They assume that this is a person who has made a conscious choice to be a drug addict or alcoholic, and they're trying to mooch off you. And that is probably, I would say that the percentage of that being true is pretty doggone low.
That's right. In fact, at our church, we, for whatever reason, in the last several years, we've had a lot of homeless people come to our church and stay. They just don't come once, and that's the end of it. And as I've listened to their stories, I would say the same thing Bonnie says. They're all different stories. We've had family members who are a family that have come into our church that no fault of their own, that he just lost his job and they ended up on the streets. Or there is the alcoholic, there is the drug addict, but there's all kinds of other kinds of people that are on the streets today that are homeless. A lot of them no fault of their own, but there are those that have. In fact, when you're talking about mental illness, 40% of the people who are homeless deal with a mental illness themselves, and many of them, if not all of them, are off their medication, and so they're acting out in a variety of ways.
They have no way to get their medication.
Right.
Yeah. And on another note, I know in the Portland area here in Oregon, we have found out that over 60% of the people that are homeless living on the street are not abusing drugs and alcohol. And there's this assumption that they're all doing it, and that's not the case. However, let's switch gears a little bit here.
Sure.
We know that there are lots of people that live with mental illness that have never touched a drink or a narcotic in their life. But we also know that if you go into any of your 12-step support meetings today, whether that's the secular ones or the faith-based ones, either one, that a large percentage of the people in those meetings are dealing with some form of mental illness, even if it's just minor depression. It seems to go hand in hand in many circles. Has that been your experience?
Well, it can, but not all people who are mentally ill deal with a substance abuse or alcoholic situation.
But lots of people that deal with that deal with illness.
And the good news now today is they do have dual diagnosis places that people can go and get help.
Yeah.
But you have to look for them. But they're there, and they can help, and they can make a big difference in their lives. This is where the therapy piece comes in.
Right.
But you've got to deal with both of them. Now, people ask, well, which is first? The person deals with alcohol or drugs, or the person who has a mental illness? Which is first? Well, that's pretty hard to figure out. In fact, most professionals, I've never met a professional that can figure that one out themselves. So what caused this and what, we don't know.
Well, we do know that bipolar disorder, for instance, isn't caused by alcohol and drug abuse. You know, you weren't fine. Everything was working 100%. You did some meth and you drank too much and you became mentally ill. A lot of people think that. They think, well, you did all these drugs and alcohols, no wonder you're mentally ill.
But you have in your system or in your being mental illness. And people say, well, I didn't become mentally ill until I was 27 or 35. Well, because it's triggered by some kind of an episode that happened in your life. You lost a mom, or you had an accident, or whatever. It didn't cause it. I'm not saying that.
Right.
It brought it on.
Brought it on.
It's always been there. It's just like and Monty, you're going to have to help me here, but I think I'm pretty close.
Yeah.
When you talk about alcoholism, a person that doesn't drink is fine. But once they take the drink, it's off to the races.
1 in 5.
Yeah.
1 in 5 already has that addictive bent. It's just waiting to be triggered.
And it's parallel to mental illness. It's very much a parallel.
Okay. Yeah, you bet. So, and this is why I tell people, I had a buddy of mine at our former church. He's turning 21. He doesn't like alcohol. He doesn't like the feeling of it. He doesn't want anything to do with it. He doesn't like the taste. But because he's 21 and it's a family tradition, he had to have this Irish cream thing. And I said, dude, 1 in 5. Do you want to take that chance? You could take one drink, very small, and you could trigger something that you will have to deal with for the rest of your life. Do you want to do that? Well, he took the drink. Nothing happened.
Good.
Praise God.
Yes, good.
You know, but we'll see. You know, okay, so So enter the realm of methamphetamines, cocaine, and I'm not going to touch on the pot thing. It's dangerous. It can be deadly. It's definitely addictive, all that kind of stuff. But specifically, what is commonly really prevalent in the street drugs, we've got chemicals now. It's not like crank back in the old days. That was pharmaceutical. We got chemicals now made out of red phosphorus, kitty litter, insect repellent, battery acid, and you take somebody that is paranoid schizophrenic, they're already hearing voices.
Yeah.
Okay. And now they're living with amphetamine psychosis.
Well,
which will cause you to hear voices.
Right.
So now you got 100 voices over on this end coming, and 100 voices coming on
just
this end.
makes it worse.
My word.
Yes.
My goodness. Thank God we have dual diagnosis centers. Origins treatment recovery centers in South Padre Island, which is that and Hannah's House, which is the women's version of that, where Dr. Phil sends a lot of the people he works with, does that. They treat the whole person. They look at diet. They look at the environment. I remember a guy that was an avid barbecuer. I mean, every day, all summer. He was standing and breathing in front of the barbecue, the fumes from the coals. It messed him up. One of the things that helped in his own personal recovery was they had to medically detox him from the stuff coming out of the coals. I went to my counselor, Diane, and I said, I don't know what's going on, but I'm waking up with these terrible headaches. She asked me, she says, how late are you eating at night? Well, I'm 7 o'clock. My wife pokes me and says, he has a bowl of ice cream every night. Just a little one. About 8 o'clock. She said, do me a favor. Just 1 week. Stop eating the ice cream. So I did. Guess what happened? Headaches went away. Amazing. So there's a holistic element to this thing too.
Right.
So addicts and alcoholics, not everybody with mental illness is an addict or an alcoholic, but so many addicts and alcoholics deal with mental illness. And our 12-step meetings, as well as some of our other meetings that folks really aren't equipped to deal with mental illness. They don't really address that issue. What can people do, Mike? They can get a hold of NAMI, right?
Yeah.
Go to the website, and we'll have a link on the webpage. People that are in the Lynn County area that might be listening, how can they get a hold of you?
Okay, I'm going to give you two. I already gave you the email address, and I'll give that to you again. It's mt2540@comcast.net. The MT2540, just to help you out a little bit here, is Matthew 25:40, which is my verse for this ministry. So it's mt2540@comcast.net. And my phone number, if you want to call, is fine too.
Okay.
541-928-6382. 928-6382 with a 541 in front of it.
And what can people, they're saying, well, if I call Mike, what do I say? What do I do? Where do I start?
Well, just talk about why you're calling me.
Yeah.
And whatever's said in our time together stays together. I don't share that with anybody else. I've been a pastor for many years, and I've learned to be a priest, which means what is said there stays there. It's confidential.
Yeah. Right.
So, and I've heard all the stories. I mean,
nothing's going to surprise you.
Nothing's going to surprise me or shock me. So, just start where you want to start, and we'll talk about it, and I'll try to help you in any way. Maybe Monty will get into this a while. I can share with you some things that you can be a part of that we have offered at Compassion Ministries.
Let's talk about that, because we've got about 5 more minutes. So let's close out.
We have a support group here in Albany that meets on the first and third Thursdays of the month in the evening at 6:30. And if you want to hear more about that, you can try either one of those, the email address or the telephone, and I can sure give you that. That's a great help as far as talking through some stuff. And nobody judges you. Everything that's said there stays there. It's confidential. We're not a gossip session. We're not going to tell you what to do unless you ask us. So it's a nice, safe place. It's very safe.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing is we have educational seminars that you're welcome to come to. The rest of the year we won't be having any because of the holidays, but coming in January, February, March, we'll start having some more. If you're wanting to get information on that, I'll be glad to send it to you either by email or however, telephone or by mail, whatever you want to do is fine. The one that sticks in my mind right now is the one in Jefferson Baptist Church, which will be March 8th, and it'll be a Saturday, and it's from 9 to 3. And to learn the particulars on that, you can give me a call or email me, and I'll tell you all that.
Okay.
But that's one in Granite. The other ones are iffies right now. So
that's Pastor D. Duke?
D. Duke, yeah.
Yep.
He's the pastor of the church. And see what else. Support group, education piece. Okay, that's plenty, right? Oh, yeah, we have one more thing, and it's called Friend to Friend Ministry. This is for people that are dealing with a mental illness that want to need a friend that's not going to judge them, that's just going to be there for them. You're welcome to be a part of that. Or if you want to help somebody that's dealing with an illness, mental illness, I train people in that area too.
Right. Well, Mike, thank you so much.
You bet.
For taking this time to share with the listeners not just the problem, but some of the solution, the things to look for, some of the red flags, what it is, what it isn't. You touched on this briefly, but I really want to emphasize this because people really get scared. People with mental illness, if they are treated properly, are not violent people.
Correct.
They're not. And just because they may be acting a little weird or they have a twitch or even if there's because even on medication, some will continue to talk to themselves.
Right.
Doesn't mean that when you walk by them, they're going to
attack.
pull out a gun and blow your head off.
Right.
It's just not.
They're no more dangerous, and we're talking about schizophrenia here,
Yeah.
flat out. They're no more dangerous than the average person on the street if they're on their medication. The National Institute of Mental Health has said that over and over and over again, and something to hang your hat on. And so when you hear in the news or so on about this guy who's schizophrenic did blah, 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 they take the most vile and they blow it way out of proportion. These folks are no more dangerous than the average person on the street.
Yeah, right on. All right, my guest, Mike Rinkin, Compassion Ministries. And for more information, follow the links on this page. We will have his email and phone number up as well. And you can also, if you're from out of the area, you can also click on the link to NAMI's webpage here at Take 12 Radio.
Would this help, Monty? Would this
Yes.
help to this sheet that I read off these symptoms? Maybe would you be willing to put that on?
Yeah,
your
we can
site?
post that. Yeah.
Okay, there you go.
Thank you. I can have this?
Yes.
Okay, we'll put a PDF file on there. People can click on that and download it as well right here at the Interview Friday page. All right, my friends. Thank you, Mike, so much.
You bet.
You guys, thank you for tuning in and listening. It's so important. We don't have a show unless we have you. Remember, you can advertise with us. You can sponsor a show. You can go to our recovery store. All the money we get, very little, but any finances we get from that, I don't get paid a salary. It goes right into the station to keep it on the air, to pay for our internet and our broadband. We have unlimited bandwidth, so thousands of people can listen at one time. And we just appreciate you so much. So until our next broadcast, this is the Monty Man along with Mike Rinkin, and we're wishing God's perfect serenity for you. Bye-bye now.
This has been a broadcast of KHLT Recovery Broadcasting.
Kitty, 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 kitty.